Welcome, listener, in the shadows. We bring stories into the light. Join me as we explore the encounters no one speaks of and the things that watch from the dark. You were never supposed to see this, but since you have, you might as well wear it. From the vaults of the shadows, a new collection of unsettling apparel and artifacts pulled straight from the stories that were never meant to surface. Soft, worn-in shirts and hoodies that feel like something you dug out of a locked trunk in an abandoned ranger station. This isn't just merch, it's evidence. The Crooked Forest Files. They used to call him the Phantom Cartographer. Before retirement, Augustin Varga worked as a topographical consultant for the Czech military archives, specializing in decommissioned sites, cold bunkers, abandoned rail spurs, silos that had been wiped off every map but never properly dismantled. His job was simple on paper: locate and verify. But Varga was never content with simple. He carried with him a black notebook at all times, separate from his field logs, where he recorded anomalies, subtle ones, places where GPS lagged inexplicably, where compasses drifted a few degrees too far. He mapped forests that seemed to inhale. He traced riverbeds that whispered at night. These were things his superiors dismissed as poetic delusion. By the time he turned 63, the department phased him out with a tidy pension and a pat on the back. The official story was that his methods were outmoded. The unofficial one: he wouldn't stop talking about sound, about landscapes that echo back what you haven't said yet, about recordings found in locations with no equipment, about frequencies that matched the human brain's resting state, playing on endless loops in rooms without power. He moved alone after that. A quiet cabin in the lower Silesian woods, where the soil still remembers the Cold War and the trees are older than the documents that hide them. He started freelance work under a new name, not for money, for closure. When the message about the Crooked Forest arrived, a single email from an anonymous address, subject line Project Szeptacz, he didn't hesitate. The file contained one photo, a pine tree bent in on itself like a question mark. Below it, a caption written in jagged Polish: "When the roots finish listening, they answer." He packed that night. Day 1. Echo Site Alpha. Compiled from the personal notes of Augustin Varga. Begin log March 9th. There is something unnervingly human about these trees. They bend like spines hunched in prayer, each pine curving at the base before reaching skyward in synchronized agony. I stood in the center of them this morning, measuring tape in hand, and for a moment I forgot what I'd come for. There's an optical effect to their formation, like the forest has a gravitational pull all its own. You move around it differently, slower, like you're being watched and measured back. I'm here under the pretense of documenting arboreal anomalies for a private ecological archive, funded, discreetly, by a preservationist group in Krakow. But the real reason I agreed to this little adventure is what I heard from a former military contact. He called it Echo Site Alpha, a Cold War-era communications relay buried under the western crook of the forest, never officially mapped, never decommissioned, and more importantly, never properly shut down. He said its transmissions were different, not radio, not sonar, something else, something that lingered. Today I found it. There's no signage, no fencing, just a shallow depression in the woods where the undergrowth grows thicker, as if reluctant to expose what's underneath. A concrete slab, half swallowed by moss and time. The door, if you can call it that, was a rusted hatch covered by a torn tarp, bolted once, now hanging open like a loose jaw. No signs of recent activity, yet the air around it was colder. Not just temperature, something tonal. Like standing beside an enormous speaker you can't hear. I went in. Of course I did. The bunker is small. One corridor, descending maybe 10 feet, then curving. Dust so thick I left footprints behind me like a trail of regrets. The first room I entered looked like a forgotten office. Filing cabinets warped by moisture, papers grown into the metal like ivy. But then I saw the soundproofing. Blackened foam panels nailed into concrete, peeling in places. There was a heavy metal desk, a dented chair, and behind them, a reel-to-reel machine. It was plugged in, still operational. No generator I could find, and no explanation for the faint hum it gave off, like it was breathing through the wall. The reels beside it were mostly unmarked, save one, labeled only with today's date, handwritten in red ink. March 9th. I haven't played it yet. I don't know why. Something in me, something older and quieter than reason, told me to wait. I brought the reel back to my camper, set up just outside the tree line. I'll listen after nightfall, once I've documented everything else. The trees, they're wrong. The bends are too uniform, too intentional. Some of them curl toward the bunker like they're reaching, like they remember what was buried here. I'll play the reel tonight. If anything unusual happens, I'll log it tomorrow. Day 2. Anomalous frequencies. March 10th. Last night I played the reel. I set the machine up in the camper, sat at the small folding table, lit one candle, just enough light to see the dials. The tape spooled smooth and silent at first. No hiss, no pop, just the clean rotation of magnetic memory. Then the static began, a wall of white noise, dry and brittle, like wind through dying grass. I almost stopped it there, chalked it up to degradation. But after maybe 30 seconds beneath the hiss, I heard it. Gravel, footsteps on gravel, slow, deliberate, crunching toward the microphone. And then, God help me, I heard my voice. Not a recording I'd ever made, not something I said, but my voice, unmistakable in its low, slightly hoarse cadence, reciting the exact note I had written in my journal minutes before. The trees, they're wrong. The bends are too uniform, too intentional, word for word. I froze, watched the tape turn. The candle flame sputtered as if reacting, and then the voice stopped. The static returned. The reel ended in silence. I rewound it, played it again. Nothing, just white noise. The footsteps were gone, my voice gone. It was as if the tape had changed. I left the camper immediately, walked the perimeter of the clearing, flashlight in hand, trying to rationalize it. Maybe I had left a mic on. Maybe there was an old recording I'd made and forgotten. Maybe I'm just getting old. But here's the part that unsettled me the most. This morning, when I returned to the clearing by the hatch, I noticed a change in the trees. 3 of the pines closest to the entrance are now bent, new bends. Not there yesterday. The soil disturbed around their bases, as if something underneath had curled them upward overnight. Each one angled toward the bunker, like they're listening or answering. I've begun sorting the other reels. Some marked with dates, some with nothing at all. I'll log them one by one. Something is happening here, something recorded, but not just in metal and tape. Something recorded in root and bark. I don't know if I'm documenting it or being documented. Day 3, the bent ones. March 11th, the forest is no longer silent. Not in the way it used to be, the gentle hush of pine needles, the wind brushing through the boughs. This is something else. A kind of held breath, like the hush before a voice begins to speak. I woke before sunrise, drenched in sweat. The camper was freezing cold, the windows fogged despite the heater still ticking. I dreamed of wires, wet wires, coiled like roots, snaking up through the camper floor and wrapping around my ankles. When I moved, they tightened. I heard them hum. It was a musical hum, something tonal. Familiar, too familiar. I stepped outside just after 6. The sun was still hiding behind the grey band of trees. The clearing looked rearranged. Subtle shifts. One of my mic tripods was tilted. The dirt near the hatch had been disturbed again. I found small impressions in the soil. Not footprints, not really. More like knees or elbows. A weight that pressed into the earth in long, low arcs, like something crawling but too heavy to be an animal. And the trees, there are now 6 that are bent. The 3 from yesterday and 3 more behind them. Perfect 90-degree curves, smooth as if shaped by heat, bending inward like they're watching the entrance. They didn't look like that yesterday. I'm sure of it. I measured them. They're forming a spiral. I spent most of the morning inside the hatch. I've begun cataloging the contents of Cabinet B, and among the folders was a manila envelope with no classification marks, just a wax seal broken. Inside, a reel labeled SZPTACZ 76 Children's Echo. I loaded it into the machine, played it once, and only once. It began with ambient room tone. Then, faintly, the sound of children talking. No music, no background hum, just pure, isolated dialogue. But the quality, it was too perfect. Like the voices were speaking directly into the base of my skull. No tape hiss, no reverb, just crystalline clarity. A girl's voice, maybe 8 or 9 years old, spoke first in Russian. "Do you hear them? They walk through the soil when we're asleep." Then a boy, slightly older, in clean English. "They teach the trees to remember. The roots carry sound." Then silence. Then the phrase repeated again, same inflection, same tone, same rhythm, word for word, as if it had been played back, not spoken anew. I turned the machine off. It didn't matter. The words kept echoing around the concrete room, bouncing through the ventilation slats and seeping through the walls. The trees remember. The roots carry sound. I stayed frozen in my chair for nearly 20 minutes. Then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. On the ceiling above the reel station, someone had scratched those exact words into the concrete, over and over, carved with a metal stylus or knife. A lattice of repetition, hundreds of lines. The phrase isn't just a metaphor, it's a function. I returned to the camper by sunset. No appetite, just tea. The kettle whistled out a tune I didn't recognize, 5 notes descending. I thought nothing of it at first. Then around 2:30 a.m., I heard something outside. A voice. No, not a voice. My voice. The trees remember. The roots carry sound. Same cadence, same tone, but just slightly wrong, like a rehearsal. It came from the woods behind the camper. I recorded it on my parabolic mic. Playback confirmed it, my voice delayed by 3 seconds. But I didn't speak. Something else did. I don't think I'm alone out here. Day 4, mapped by echo. March 12th, the forest has learned to delay me. I don't mean physically. I mean temporally. Like the trees, the dirt, even the air are buffering me. I spent most of today trying to prove that thought wrong. The idea came while eating breakfast. If this place is playing tricks, then I'll catch it doing so. I set up 3 vintage field microphones on a looped path around the bunker entrance. Each mic pointed at a gravel trail I paced across repeatedly, recording the sound of my footsteps. Then I played them back. The first mic sounded normal, standard step rhythm. The second, 1 step behind. The third, 2 steps behind. That's not reverb. That's not delay caused by distance or wind. That's temporal lag. The sounds weren't just echoing. They were remembering. Worse yet, on the final loop, I distinctly remember stopping for water. My thermos wasn't in my hand. I walked back to grab it off the stone ledge where I left it and watched myself already doing that 30 feet away. Not a reflection, not a shadow, an exact replay, clothes the same. My gait, my posture, even the low curse I muttered when I knocked the thermos over. It played back like a projected memory in 3 dimensions. And then nothing. The image was gone. Just me standing alone. I vomited in the brush. It's the first time I've gotten properly scared since arriving. Once I composed myself, I went back down into the hatch. It was cold again, unnaturally cold, like the walls themselves had dropped a degree. The static on the tape reels now has an intentionality to it, like it's listening, waiting for a sound to mimic. I brought my field maps inside, tried to chart out the clearing, distance between bent trees, bunker coordinates. I've done this 1,000 times in my career, but the grid wouldn't align. Every measurement was off by a few inches, then a few feet, then by yards. The forest won't stay still. I reset the GPS 3 times. It refused to stabilize. Each time I marked my position, the tracker would slowly drift until my icon hovered directly beneath the center of the spiral grove. No matter where I stood, no matter where I walked, it kept pulling my location back to the origin. I took a long walk after that, intent on exiting the tree line. 40 minutes northeast. I marked trees with orange tape as I went. I saw no buildings, no roads, no boundary fences, just endless curling pines, until I arrived at a familiar stump with a faded strip of orange tape fluttering in the wind. One I'd marked before. At the very start of the walk, I had walked in a perfect loop, not just physically, spatially. The terrain had reorganized itself around me. The forest is now a closed system. I don't believe it ever wanted me to leave. It knows I'm trying. I set my tent outside the bunker tonight. I want to test something. I'm leaving my recorder running. If the forest is echoing life, I want to see what it echoes when I sleep. Wish me silence. Day 5. Mirror Reels. March 13th. I found another room. Not down the main corridor where the reel machines hum behind rust-colored doors, but tucked behind a crumbled wall in the lowest section of the bunker. I never saw the split in the concrete before. Maybe it wasn't there. Maybe it is now. The breach was no wider than a crawl space. I had to shimmy through sideways, hands brushing against moist stone. My flashlight flickered once, then again. What I emerged into wasn't a secret vault or a military annex. It was my workspace, but older, same desk, same notebook, same metal chair with a dent in the backrest. Dust coated everything, but only in a way that suggested time, not abandonment. As if this room had been kept preserved by someone who knew how to let dust settle without allowing rot. The notebook was mine, my name on the inside cover, my handwriting, but the dates were all 10 years ago, and each entry mirrored mine, word for word, line for line, up through yesterday. I skimmed page after page with the same queasy, or one might feel looking at their own obituary in print. The same breakfast, the same footsteps, the same orange tape, the same vomiting, even the same sentence about vomiting. At the end of the entries, there was one more passage I had not written yet. When the forest finishes learning your shape, it keeps you. The recording is never deleted, only re-recorded. Something deep inside me broke reading that. What if there is no original me here? What if I'm just another layer of tape laid clean over the last? I checked the room for any signs of who had made this copy. Any indication this was a prank, a trap, a hallucination. But the metal reel machine in the corner was the same model I've been using. It still worked. And when I loaded the newest reel and pressed play, it began with static. Then the sound of my voice, laughing. Not a new laugh, an old one I don't remember making, laced with something panicked beneath it, a performance of calm. And after a pause, it said, flat and final, "You left the recorder running in your sleep. It saw what you did." I turned it off. I haven't touched it since. I tried to leave the forest again this afternoon. No compass, no GPS, no tape markings, just instinct. I walked for hours. Sun dropped behind the trees. And I swear, I passed myself, coming back the other direction. He didn't look at me, but he had my pack, my gait. The same fresh mud on his boots from crossing the shallow stream I just left behind. I didn't say a word. I let him pass. There are too many of me here. The forest doesn't echo, it clones. And somewhere beneath the moss, the bent pines, the warped data, there's a final version of me waiting to be recorded over. One more entry tomorrow. Then I find the source. I have to. Day 6. A voice through trees. March 14th. I'm not staying inside the bunker tonight. I've dragged my cot and field kit a few hundred meters out to the edge of the southern perimeter, near the creek, where the pine roots twist in on themselves like veins. It's colder here, but at least the air feels real, unobserved. The reel machines were still humming when I left, even the ones I unplugged. I've stopped trusting the sound of my own voice. This morning I muttered a phrase out loud, something simple. Need more batteries. And I heard it repeat back 2 seconds later. Not through a speaker, not through the trees, from my own mouth. It was me, my voice, my inflection, my tired rasp. But I hadn't spoken. It replayed. Later I tried it again, deliberately this time. Augustin Varga, field log, day 6, silence. Then a quiet inhale, my own, and a perfect replication. Augustin Varga, field log, day 6. But it was off, just slightly. Like a person reciting a line they'd practiced hundreds of times without understanding it. It didn't feel like me. It felt like an audition. I listened to the old notebooks again, mine, but aged. Pages warped, ink bleeding at the corners. Each word anticipates mine like muscle memory, writing itself before I can decide what I'm thinking. Tonight, I flip to the final page. There's one last phrase scribbled there, messy, frantic, not like the rest. It isn't repeating anymore, it's responding. At twilight, I heard someone in the woods, light footsteps, not cautious, comfortable. Like someone walking a path they knew well. I called out, "Hello, who's there?" My voice came back softer. slower, a different cadence like it had passed through a filter of moss and soil. "Hello, who's there?" And then a pause, then something added. "You should lie down now." I didn't say that. I packed what I could. Recorder, spare tapes, one flare. I tried to write down my location, but the GPS marked it as 0.00000 degrees N, 0.00000 degrees E, a null zone. I walked for what felt like hours, but the sound followed me, not footsteps, breath. The forest inhales, I exhale. The forest exhales, I follow. When I speak now, the delay is longer, 3 seconds, maybe 4. And my echoes don't always match. I said, "I'm tired of this." And the voice came back. "Then sleep in the roots. We'll keep your shape." My voice still mine, but spoken like a lullaby, final, rehearsed. This is the last log I can keep without risking contamination, not of the data of myself. I think the forest has enough of me now. Maybe it always did. I can feel it moving under the ground, not roots, reels, turning, looping, rewriting. There's no silence here. Even the air plays back. Tomorrow I go deeper. If I can find the central relay, the origin of the whisperer signal, I might still shut it down. But if this is the last tape, please don't play it aloud. You don't know what's listening. Day 7, playback loop. Final tape recovered from Echo Site Alpha, audio intelligible only when reversed. If you're hearing this, then I've started again. The reel turns. The roots remember, so do I. Eventually, faint creak of pine trees swaying, unnatural and synchronized. Tape hiss rises like breath. I am Augustin Varga, or I was. I mapped cities that no longer exist. I named roads that outlived their names. But here in this forest, I became the thing I charted, and like any good map, I've been folded. There is no center, only return. I found the Whisperer chamber this morning. The walls were covered in bark, smooth, worn, as if hundreds of hands had touched them over decades. No speakers, no reels, just a wooden ring suspended in the air by its own resonance. I spoke into it, and it finished my sentence. I am not afraid of dying. I've heard it before. It's soft, almost warm, like falling asleep while someone reads a story you already know the ending to. Each time I walked into that clearing, the forest took a little more. First my sense of distance, then my footsteps, then my thoughts. Now even my voice returns to me out of sync. I've become a loop. You wanted a record, didn't you? Well, this is it. A living archive, a field report wrapped in bark and blood. And when it finishes playing, the next voice you hear will be yours. Day 1, Echo Site Alpha. End of transcript. You made it back for now, but the things in the dark never truly leave, do they? They watch, they wait, and perhaps they remember you now too. If you want to hear more, if you dare to listen again, step back into the shadows. Like the video, subscribe, but know this, some doors once opened do not close so easily.